There's about $360 billion of spending in this new legislation. About $100 billion of that legislation is involved in inflation reduction and healthcare, and the rest of it, truly the majority of the spending, is addressing climate change. So how will we address that? Well, one way is to change the way we generate electricity. Right now, most electricity in the United States is generated by burning coal or natural gas, but burning coal and natural gas at the very least results in the release of carbon dioxide. It results in other negative consequences. If you live near one of these kinds of facilities, particularly a coal generating plant, there's the risk of increased particulate pollution and increased mercury pollution, and those absolutely have a negative effect on people's lives. Communities, particularly communities of color, are disproportionately affected by this kind of pollution. Carbon dioxide by itself is not toxic being released to the environment. And the concentrations that are being released are very small, but the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere naturally is very small to begin with. And so releasing small amounts really has a big effect. So what will the Inflation Reduction Act do? One of the things it will do is it will incentivize energy companies, electricity utilities, to start building plants that don't use coal, that don't use natural gas, that don't use petroleum. By the way, very little generation is from petroleum, but start generating electricity using clean energy resources. The Inflation Reduction Act has more than $200 billion of spending that are focused on changing our energy system, creating incentives for both companies and individuals to use energy in a different way, to use energy more efficiently, and to use non-carbon based forms of energy. So non-carbon based forms of energy would be energy resources that are not based on fossil fuels, which when you burn them are going to release carbon dioxide, but sources of energy like solar energy, wind energy, that are readily available to us, but require incentives to get people to move toward them. So for example, instead of burning coal to generate electricity, we could be putting up solar panels, which will generate electricity just as well when the sun's shining, to do all the things we normally do, including providing the electricity to make video recordings like this. There are incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act to help energy companies build the power plants of the future that won't be emitting carbon dioxide to help address this climate change problem. In addition, there are incentives for individuals. So for example, there are incentives for individuals to buy electric cars instead of cars that have internal combustion engines and burn gasoline, which results in the emissions of carbon dioxide, as well as other pollutants. I mean, individuals now who buy an electric car will get a $7,500 rebate from the federal government. There are even rebates for individuals who buy used electric cars built into the Inflation Reduction Act. There are incentives for individuals to put energy efficiency improvements into their own homes, to insulate their homes better, or to replace natural gas furnaces with electric furnaces, to put in more efficient water heating systems for hot water. There are a whole variety of things. Some of them may seem very obscure. There's a piece of the Inflation Reduction Act to incentivize the production of hydrogen. And you might think, well, why hydrogen? Well, hydrogen, when you burn it, only releases water and heat. And it's possible to store hydrogen much more efficiently, much more easily than it is to store electricity currently. In addition to that, hydrogen can actually be used as a fuel for cars and trucks. And we're going to be seeing more and more of that. The Inflation Reduction Act has a significant amount of money uh, in it for incentivizing companies to make hydrogen and to make hydrogen in a clean way, not to make hydrogen by uh, using natural gas, but to make hydrogen gas by splitting water, infinitely available to us. There are lots of other components of this. There's clean manufacturing that's going to be incentivized. It's going to touch every aspect of our economy, and it's going to influence all of us. So what are going to be the overall consequences of this? Well, we know that climate is changing, and it's because the global temperature is increasing. This act, for the first time, is going to dramatically result in a decrease in our carbon emissions. It should, over the period of maybe the next 10 or 15 years, reduce our carbon emissions by about 40% from where they were um, in the early 2000s. Um, that isn't going to get us all the way there, but it's a very good first step. It's it's going to allow us as the United States to uh, show leadership in this effort in a way that we haven't been able to in the past. It will make it much easier for us to convince other countries to follow our lead in this, and it's going to result in uh, cleaner air in general, um, as well as help mitigate this climate change problem that we're all going to be confronting, probably for the rest of our lives. Some of the changes that have been put in motion by our burning of fossil fuels are not going to change very rapidly, but we want to avoid the worst consequences that are, are going to occur if we don't change our habits. So this is a very good first step, and one that is going to have a positive effect on all of our lives.